The forge lab burned like a miniature sun. Plasma arcs split the air, molten alloys poured through transparent conduits, and sparks drifted like fireflies under the cold hum of machinery. 50 alien cadets worked in silence, their instructor watching from the observation deck. Today's challenge was simple and sacred. Forge a blade, any material, any method, but it had to cut. To the students of the Galactic Metallurgy Academy, this was a rite of pride, a test of progress, of civilization itself. Their tools were miracles of science: antimatter furnaces, nano-assemblers, gravity shears. They carved the air with light and shaped metals that could slice atoms. And then the door hissed open. Every head turned. The human walked in late, wearing a soot-stained jacket and a look that said he hadn't slept much. In his hands wasn't a crate of alloys or a plasma core, but a bundle of cloth. He set it on the workbench, unwrapped it, and revealed a piece of bone. The room fell silent. No hum of energy, no glow of heat, just the pale, time-worn fragment of some ancient creature. The instructor frowned. "Cadet Ward, where is your material?" The human ran a thumb along the smooth surface, eyes distant, almost reverent. "This is my material," he said quietly. "It used to be alive." The scoffing began almost immediately. A Tracon engineer laughed from behind a force hammer. "Did your power core fail, primitive?" Another cadet, her carapace still scorched from plasma splash, sneered. "That's organic scrap, not even molecularly aligned. It's brittle." Ryan Ward didn't answer. He sat down, opened a leather pouch, and pulled out a rough, black whetstone. No vibra tool, no chemical bath, just stone in hand. He held the bone long and slightly curved, likely from a femur at an angle, and began sharpening. Shk, 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 shk. The sound sliced through the background hum of machinery. Even the fusion crucibles seemed quieter now. His strokes were slow, deliberate, even. No waste of motion. The instructor, Professor Cathera, stepped closer to the observation rail. Her voice was unreadable. "That bone is fossilized. It has no tensile memory. Why attempt to forge with decay?" Rian didn't look up. "Fossilization doesn't erase structure, it refines it. Pressure and time make sure of that." A Vrathi cadet leaned forward. "You think that rock you're grinding is going to cut a forged alloy?" Rian paused, turned the blade slightly in the light, and resumed. Shk, 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 shk. It wasn't confidence. It was clarity, discipline with an edge. The scanner array above his bench began flickering warnings. Not errors, alerts. The bone's lattice structure was changing. Under the stone, microfractures were aligning. Collagen gaps filled in with crystalline mineral. The outer layers compressed inward, reorganizing. The instructor leaned closer. "It's reinforcing," she murmured. "Under friction stress." The medical diagnostic suite buzzed unexpectedly. The bone's density exceeded 20 gigapascals. The readings didn't match any modern composite, not metal, not ceramic, and certainly not any known organic polymer. The class ignored it. They had moved on to forging. A Zarnan cadet shaped a sword from an alloy that phase-shifted mid-strike. Another formed a monomolecular wire along the edge of a vibra blade, its hum barely audible. There were molten-edge sabers, zero-point daggers, even one gravity-looped scalpel that could shear through neutron foam. Each was beautiful, terrifying, perfect. Rian continued sharpening. He didn't talk, he didn't measure, he only honed. After hours, when the lab dimmed for cycle end and the final blades cooled in their sanctums, Professor Cathera called the session to a close. "Return tomorrow," she said, "for evaluation. You will present your blade. It will be tested, and it will be judged." Rian placed his bone blade into a case lined with cloth. The handle was wrapped in a strip of his own jacket. No etching, no plasma seal, only time. As the others filed out, laughing, boasting, theorizing, Ryan remained behind. He ran the whetstone over the edge one last time. Shuck, shuck. He could still feel it in his hands, the old shape beneath the new. The memory of a creature that once ran, hunted, fed. He didn't know the exact species, but he knew what it had been. A killer. And now its remains were sharper than any forge in the galaxy. The next cycle began with anticipation humming in the recycled air. The evaluation chamber was larger than the forge lab, domed and gleaming, designed to handle catastrophic failures which, at the Galactic Metallurgy Academy, were not rare during weapon testing. Shields flickered along the inner walls. A row of armor-plated drones waited silently at one end, programmed to withstand most bladed strikes. Cadets lined up beside long tables where their creations lay in presentation cradles. Each blade shimmered with technological artistry, alloyed beauty, honed depth. Professor Cathera stood beside the diagnostic matrix, arms clasped behind her back. "Today's test," she said, "is function, not form. Show me what your edge can do." One by one, the students stepped forward. The Zarnin's phase saber cleaved through high-density armor foam, leaving no residue. The crowd applauded. The Trakan's grav-edge blade sliced clean through an obsidian cylinder twice its diameter. A Hakari cadet's molecular filament knife hummed so finely it passed through a vibration-proof block as if parting mist. Each success was met with polite nods and rising tension. No one mentioned the human, but many glanced at his table and at the bone resting atop a strip of canvas, silent and pale. Rian Ward had yet to move. Cathera finally turned. "Cadet Ward, you're next." He walked forward, carrying the blade in both hands. The moment he placed it on the pedestal, the surrounding scanners flickered not violently, but inconsistently. They pulsed, as if the readings didn't make sense. One of the observers frowned. "There's no metallic signature." "Structure?" asked another. The reply was hesitant, organic, but compressed. Crystalline matrix, variable density. Some of it reads stronger than woven tungsten. Other parts, heel microfractures. Professor Cathera narrowed her gaze. "Explain this." Rian adjusted the blade's position. "The bone is fossilized, not in the traditional sense. It's been under pressure for a few 100,000 years, maybe more. Its cellular matrix hardened under silica replacement. The outer structure is what we call bioceramic. The inner layers are layered in collagen memory strands." "Memory?" asked a skeptical Vrathi. "It remembers stress, rebuilds against it." Thera tapped the console. "Blade 1 to 7, begin test." A standard strike was performed against a Durasteel rod, the same test used for all blades. Most plasma or vibra weapons cut the rod easily. The bone blade passed through with no resistance. But unlike the others, the cut didn't spark or vibrate. It was silent, absolute. A diagnostic line formed on the monitor perfectly clean. No chatter, no warp, no heat signature. The crowd murmured. Cathera gestured. "Repeat test with composite armor." Another block rose. Layers of polymer mesh, kinetic sponge, and ceramic shell, the same material used in outer atmosphere combat suits. Ryan lifted the blade. There was no stance, no dramatic movement. He simply brought the edge down. The block split open with a dull whisper. Not cut, separated. The diagnostics blinked red. "Test interrupted," the system said. "Material failure. Internal delamination detected in containment cradle." Cathera turned. "You fractured the base?" Ryan nodded. "It vibrated wrong." "You cracked our vibration-proof foundation?" "Wasn't aiming for it." Another cadet muttered, "It doesn't even have an edge. It just looks worn." Rian didn't react. Cathera lifted the blade herself. She expected imbalanced bones didn't carry uniform density, but this one did, perfectly, as if shaped not by tool, but time. "Where did you get this?" Rian met her eyes. "Earth. Northern Highlands. Dug it out of a salt bed, cleaned it, ground it down, honed it." "Of what species?" He paused. "I don't know the taxon. Maybe something between a dire wolf and a short-faced bear. My grandfather used to say it was from something our ancestors survived by learning to kill, or dying." The chamber was still. Cathera placed the blade down, more gently now. "You made this from the remains of a predator?" "No," Ryan said, "from the thing that hunted the predators." The medical scanner chimed again. Cathera glanced at it. "The edge has reformed." The technician double-checked. "It's regenerating its alignment, like enamel under pressure." "It heals?" someone whispered. Rian crossed his arms. A lot of things on Earth do, even after death. Cathera tapped the console. A third target rose composite alloy with active nanoweave. Nearly impossible to cut, it healed on impact. Rian raised the bone, brought it down. The block split, and did not close. Silence. The lab's temperature monitor ticked down a fraction, some instinctual reaction among the alien cadets, a drop in collective energy. Cathera looked at him. What's the blade's name? Rian blinked. It doesn't have one. It deserves one. He thought for a moment. Memory. She nodded. Then, quietly, the instructor stepped back and reset the evaluation board. No score was recorded. Only one word was entered beside Rian's name. Unclassifiable. The day after the test, the bone blade sat sealed in a containment cradle under a dozen active scanners. Its pale surface reflected none of the forge light, absorbing everything like an artifact that refused to belong in a world of circuits and plasma. Professor Cathera hadn't dismissed the class that day. She had simply said, "No one leaves until we understand this." Half the students had gone pale, some literally. The idea that something organic had outperformed their finest alloys rattled every metallurgist in the room. Rian Ward, the human, sat quietly on a bench, hands clasped, gaze fixed on the containment field. He looked neither proud nor defensive, only patient, as if he were waiting for the others to catch up. Cathera stood at the central console, crystalline eyes reflecting data readouts that made no sense. The lattice density exceeds known metallic limits. Its compression rate is non-linear, regenerative under mechanical stress. A Vrathi cadet snapped, "That's impossible. Organic material decays. It doesn't self-reinforce." "Under normal biological conditions, no," Cathera said, voice calm. "But this bone isn't biological anymore. It's transitional." Lena, the Serkai medic assigned to the metallurgy cohort for safety oversight, activated her scanner. "Transitional? Between organic and mineral?" "Precisely," Cathera replied. "Fossilization replaced most organic matter with silicates, but not completely. It left collagen filaments embedded in the crystal matrix. Every time Cadet Ward sharpened it, friction reoriented those filaments. They behave now like self-aligning stress fibers." She turned to Ryan. "And you did this without instrumentation?" He shrugged slightly. "I just listened." The class murmured. "Listened?" one cadet repeated, disbelief dripping from the word. Rian leaned back. "Bone sings when you grind it right. You can hear when the fibers align. You don't need a sensor for that. Just patience and good hands." Cathera watched him for a long moment. "Your people still forge by ear?" "Sometimes," Ryan said. "It's how you learn balance." Lena stepped closer to the containment cradle. "Professor, may I?" Cathera nodded. The Serkai medic carefully lowered the field and placed the blade onto the diagnostic bed. A soft pulse of light scanned along its length. Medical scanners were tuned to life tissue, cells, microbes, but this one was neither dead nor alive. Her crest rippled. "It's reactive." "Explain," Cathera said. Lena frowned, eyes narrowing at the monitor. "When exposed to heat or impact, it doesn't just resist damage, it reorganizes on a microscopic level. The collagen matrix behaves like an adaptive muscle, contracting where the structure weakens." Another cadet scoffed. "So it heals?" Lena nodded slowly. "In a manner of speaking." Cathera turned back to Rian. "You understand what this means? You've accidentally created the first self-stabilizing solid material without nanotech or AI patterning." Rian shook his head. "Not the first. Nature did it a long time ago." "Nature?" He looked up. "Bone's been doing this for hundreds of millions of years. It breaks, then it heals. Stress lines become stronger. Same idea, different scale." Cathera studied him. "And you think this instinct applies to a fossil?" Rian smiled faintly. "Pressure remembers." The lab went quiet again. One of the crystalline students tilted her head. "But why use it as a weapon? Surely it could serve better as armor or structure." Rian's answer was steady. "Because it's honest. It cuts, but it doesn't need to kill. It just proves it can survive the strike." Cathera tapped the console again. "Then let's test its limits." The containment walls shimmered as a new series of targets emerged, denser, smarter, alive. Synthetic muscle composites, the kind used in bioships. They flexed and tensed under their own power. Rian retrieved the blade. It fit his hand perfectly now, balanced like memory made tangible. "Proceed," said Kythera. He took one step forward and struck. The blade didn't whistle, it didn't hum. It whispered through the synthetic muscle like wind through reeds. The target twitched once and fell still. Every reading spiked. Kythera barked, "Cease test." The medical diagnostic alarms flashed. The cut tissue wasn't degrading, it was sterile. The bone surface carried no microbial trace, no transfer, no contamination. It had seared the synthetic biology clean, without heat or plasma. Lena's crest pulsed in astonishment. "That shouldn't be possible. There's no energy field." Ryan turned the blade in his hand. "There's a difference between sharp and honest." Kythera stepped forward. "Explain that, cadet." Rian held the bone upright, its pale surface catching the forge light. "Sharp is something you make. Honest is something that already knows what it's for." No one spoke for a while. Finally, Kythera said quietly, "You are speaking of a tool as if it has intent." Rian's jaw tightened. "Everything on Earth has intent. Even the things that are gone." She stared at him, realizing what he meant. "You forged this from something extinct." "Yes." "Something your species killed?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Something that tried to kill us first." Kythera's voice lowered. "So, this is a conversation between predator and prey." Rian sheathed the blade in its cloth. "Something like that. Every scar is a lesson. We just decided to listen to ours." The professor turned to the class. "No more tests today. Record your data and clear the floor." The students filed out silently this time. No mockery, no laughter. The sound of their machines faded one by one until only the human and the instructor remained. Kythera approached him. "Do you realize what you've demonstrated? You've shown the entire concept of forging wrong. We force matter to obey us. You persuaded it." Rian gave a small shrug. "Sometimes, that's the only way things stay together." Kythera's crystalline fingers brushed the data tablet. "Your bone will be studied, replicated, perhaps." Rian looked up, his expression unreadable. "You can try, but I think what made it work isn't in the material." "Then where?" she asked. "In the patience to wait for it to remember what it was made to do." The professor didn't have an answer. When Ryan left, the lab lights dimmed automatically behind him. The scanners kept running, whispering soft notes across the bone's surface. Each pass revealed the same quiet miracle: no fractures, no warping, no sign of wear. Only the faint pulse of molecular alignment, steady as a heartbeat. And in the spectral trace at the edge of the scan, Kythera swore she saw a pattern repeating within the fossil lattice. Pressure, memory, adapt, endure. The bone blade sat under 5 layers of magnetic shielding, inside a vacuum-sealed cradle, watched by half a dozen rotating surveillance orbs. It had no moving parts, no power source. Yet the lab's security protocol rated it as a Class 7 hazardous implement. That designation was normally reserved for singularity grenades and bioreactive antimatter coils. Professor Kythera stood beside a holographic display of the bone's microstructure, her claws tapping against the interface in slow, thoughtful rhythm. Each scan only deepened the mystery. The fossil wasn't just hard, it was layered in such a way that pressure was distributed backward through the lattice, rerouted like hydraulic shock in living tissue. No metal behaved like that. It was more like tendon interlaced with ceramic. Alive in memory, if not in fact. Across the room, a cluster of visiting researchers had arrived from the Paleometallurgy Consortium. One of them, a feline-bodied Mirac specialist named Dr. Severin, scoffed as he reviewed the core data. "You're calling this a weapon," he said, "but it isn't even metallized. It lacks thermal resistance. Its tensile resilience drops off after 10 degrees Kelvin shift." Kythera didn't look up. "It doesn't need to survive space, just impact." Severin's whiskers twitched. "Why not replicate it? Grow a hybrid structure in a reactive vat." Rian Ward entered then, quiet as ever. No tools in hand, just a data slate and a thermos of dark, sludgy liquid that humans swore helped their cognitive function. You could grow it, he said, but it wouldn't mean the same thing. Severin eyed him. Meaning doesn't hold molecules together. Rian walked over to the display. Neither does arrogance. This isn't about building a new alloy. It's about understanding how it came to be. What it endured. Another researcher chimed in. Endurance doesn't make a weapon. Rian's voice was calm. Tell that to the ones who survived being hunted for 1,000,000 years. Severin's tail flicked in irritation. You're making poetry out of debris. Cathera spoke then. No, he's making discipline out of extinction. The room went silent. Lena, the Serkai medic, stepped forward. She was holding a printout of the most recent tissue scans, not of the blade, but of Ryan. He's not wrong, she said. I ran a stress profile on his musculoskeletal system during the tests. His grip strength is uneven from injury, not fatigue. Microfractures in his phalanges, scar tissue in his dominant wrist. None of it from forging, all from previous breaks. Ryan raised a brow. Is that a health violation? She ignored him. It means he's sharpened things before, likely without proper equipment, likely in survival conditions. His bone blade isn't elegant, it's functional. This isn't engineering, it's instinct. Cathera studied him. What were you sharpening? Old bones, some knives, a couple of spears, Ryan said. I learned from my grandfather. He said our ancestors didn't have time to be perfect. They just had to be sharp enough to live until the next sunrise. Severin exhaled sharply. Primitive. Ryan looked him straight in the eyes. Effective. There was no malice, no pride, just certainty. One of the research drones chimed as a background data sweep concluded. New alert. Genetic trace match Ursus inhumatus. Subterranean predator. Pleistocene epoch. Eastern Earth. Lena blinked. That's what the bone came from? Cathera read the annotation. They had jaw pressure exceeding 32 megapascals. Teeth like monomolecular wedges. Internal bone structure evolved to absorb full-body impacts without shattering. Severin stepped closer to the display. But those things were extinct before recorded civilization. They were, Rian said. But our people remembered them. We carved them into myth, into monsters, into warnings. Lena tilted her head. And you turned one into a blade. Rian looked at the containment cradle. No, I reminded it what it was. Another scan concluded. This one analyzed the edge degradation of the blade after the last tests. Result, none. Edge retention, 100%. Self-realignment of collagen lattice, confirmed. One of the younger cadets in the back whispered, It's adapting. Cathera didn't respond right away. She watched the blade through the glass and finally said, What if this isn't just a relic? What if this is Earth showing us what memory looks like when it's carved into matter? Severin opened his mouth to object and closed it again. Because the longer they looked at the bone blade, the more it resembled something that had waited a very long time to be picked up again. Later that evening, the containment lights dimmed for system maintenance. Only two figures remained in the lab, Ryan and Cathera. The professor approached him slowly, folding her arms behind her back. Why did you really choose that bone, cadet? He didn't answer right away. When he finally did, it was in a low, quiet voice. My grandfather found it when he was young. Said it came from a time when humans weren't at the top of anything. We were prey. We learned fast. Learned to sharpen whatever we had. Cathera nodded. You forged it to honor that? No, Rian said. I forged it because we forgot. And something told me we shouldn't. He tapped the cradle glass with a knuckle. We made cities, skyscrapers. We broke the sky, but we used to survive by knowing how to hold one edge, in one hand, when everything around us wanted us dead. That blade is what taught us. Even if no one remembers. Cathera placed a hand on the console. And now? Rian looked up at her. Now we're back in a galaxy full of things that don't care if we survive. I think it's time we remembered how to hold that edge again. She didn't argue. Because for all the technology, all the progress, all the shimmering tools and folding matter, nothing in that lab had cut deeper than the bone of a dead predator held by the hand of its prey. The evaluation chamber hummed with subdued energy. At one side of the grand platform, the bone blade of Cadet Ryan Ward rested on a velvet-lined pedestal. On the other, dozens of weapons engineered by the galaxy's greatest metallurgists stood upright, glowing alloys, phasic edges, vibrating filaments, and more. The air was thick with expectation and unease. Professor Cathera stepped forward and cleared her throat. Today we conclude this forging exercise. Her crystalline face was in repose, unreadable. Each blade will be ranked according to sharpness, durability, versatility, and innovation. She paused, scanning the assembled weapons. And then we will review the anomalous entry. A murmur passed through the audience. She indicated Rian's blade. Cadet Ward, would you present your weapon one more time? Rian rose quietly. He took the bone blade from its cradle, its pale surface gleaming under the lights despite its simplicity. He turned toward the assembly. His voice was steady. This blade is not about bending futures, it's about remembering origins. He held the weapon horizontally. Forged from a fossil of something that hunted our ancestors, sharpened not with machine, but with patience. Its edge was earned. The technicians began their scans. A biomechanical spectrum, reading, density analysis, and lattice realignment check all ran simultaneously. The numbers blinked into existence, all exceeding the Academy's known benchmarks for blades, even those constructed of superalloys. Professor Cathera's voice came again. Results are conclusive. This blade demonstrated 1. A molecular reliability never seen. 2. Self-healing microfractures. 3. A pressure-adaptive structure. The submissions by your peers were exemplary. But none matched this. The alien cadets exchanged glances. Some clenched mechanical fists, others just stared. Cathera walked to Ryan and placed a hand upon his shoulder. The bone you've used has entered our catalogs. It will be classified Element 643 Ward. Research into its replication potential begins immediately. Rian nodded. Thank you, Professor. Then, the professor turned to the class. Let this be a lesson. Forging is not merely about shaping metal, it is about understanding what you begin with. She looked at Rian's blade and asked, What did you begin with, Cadet? Rian thought for a moment. A memory, of survival, of being hunted, of finding one tool and one moment and making it count. The lab fell quiet as his words settled. An alien cadet shouted from the back, Then why use this bone? Why not recreate your alloy before now? Rian answered calmly, Because we forgot what it taught us. Progress taught us convenience. Convenience taught us complacency. That bone taught us not just how to sharpen, but why to stay sharp. The crowd understood. Cathera concluded the session. Let the record show, Cadet Rian Ward, human, achieved the highest performance in this forging exercise. More importantly, you reminded us what a blade signifies. She gestured to the bone. A reminder of origin. A reminder that even the dead can teach the living. As the cadets filed out, the bone blade remained on the pedestal, bathed in light. Rian watched them go, then gently touched the edge. He didn't test sharpness again. He didn't claim triumph. He only whispered, Remember. Later, alone in the forge lab, he cleaned the blade with a soft cloth. Not to polish, but to honor. In the reflection of the blade's surface, he saw not himself, but those who sharpened bone long before machines. He felt the weight of their hands in his own. The forge fires were off, the plasma arcs gone dark. But the heat of a lesson remained. It is not enough to forge a blade. One must understand the world that made it. And for that day, at the Galactic Metallurgy Academy, a piece of fossil bone became more than a weapon. It became history, and, in its silence, lay the sharpest cut of all.